beginning with page 3, praise to the Shakyamuni Buddha. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan. I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, formed supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme science face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Thus three like you, the 3 worlds are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Saviour having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower rounds, the one path, the sublime reality, to the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts. To you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all 3 ever devout homage. To all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms, atoms, in all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. Page 15, the Heart of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagawan was dwelling on massive Vulture's mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagawan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perfection. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara: how should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Sharadvatiputra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. The Buddhas who dwell in the three times, also manifestly completely awakened to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment, in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as the truth since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata gate gate para gate para sangate bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagawan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, Well said son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagawan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadvatiputra, Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagawan. Page 25. Osashi Poike Joksheng Neto Shangri Raling Nidegen Badi Sangye Shingyu Mede Page 27. Sanje Chodan Soji Chodan La Chanjo Bado Dani Gyabson Chi Dagi Chujin Gibe Sonam Ki Dola Pinche Sanje Dropa Sho Sanje Chodan Soji Chodan La Chanjo Bado Dani Gyabson Chi Dagi Chujin Gibe Sonam Ki Dola Pinche Sanje Dropa Sho Sanje Chodan Soji Chodan La Chanjo Bado Dani Gyabson Dagi Chujin Gibe Sonam Ki Dola Pinche Sanje Dropa Sho Kagado Zenye Save Dola Jitoma Yin Deme Chine Denze Godam Dela Chazela Tonye Nyenche Sonde Jebe Lan Shiji Senze Kanche Dinde Chana Bemo Dinde Jasa So de so chen de len de sho ban de ze la ma ram ba chen da gi ni gro be me de sha ka de ji me gu ne ju zon de gu zon do je ngo do ze de so ai da gu no kom de jab sho asra.
Okay, so we'll start with a motivation meditation.
다 가고 공로 알아서 메시지나 로리 딘데게 다 체매숑 전다 되게 중요하대 베게 그거 야구 이 삼지 가고 공로
So now, rejoice. Feel very fortunate you have this opportunity to study about awareness and knowers, learn about things like valid cognition and so forth. This is a very wonderful opportunity, so take great joy in that.
다 다다 무슨 시고라 나 무슨 스나 가르라고 그러다 배나 먼저 셰바딜러와 셰바디 유독주게 시고 셰바디 유독주들라 아니 배나 먼저 다른 쇼베도 와서 내주 중교로 보지 단다 심나를 텐데 주시도 데 텐데 많이 벌어 지 셈나를 똑바 차대거든 많이 버시지 카둑 통해야 돼 배나 먼저 단다 게 탭데 카둑 통보다 이게 예미 시디게 탭 카둑로 통도보다 어디 유도주의 거네 아니 무슨 라비아데 데레다 무슨 세야데 당부터 내지를 무슨 스코어다
So when we talk about this direct perceiver, right? This is the mind's, a consciousness, I shouldn't say mind. This is a consciousness apprehending its object, but in a direct way. in a direct way, so that, like, remembering something, that's not what we'd consider a direct perceiver, because it's conceptual or it's mixed with thoughts. This is like a direct perception. Sorry, do you want me to tell Geshe-la this? Or?
그래. 그래.
I've got to tell Geshe-la. I mean,
그래.
so the pe mangwa. The seni rere pe kashin te.
디디야. 배나 무슨 슬라이인데 단다 무슨데 아니 응얼라 된데 하고네 하고 단다 미기 통해야 되라 무슨 직샤도 단데 셰 암조녀야 돼. 당 무슨 될라 옹보다 이스니셔로 다 옹보디 미기 통해야 돼. 무슨 직도 상하 때디나시 암조가 단다 게 장어스 안동알 계시에 등에 무슨 거기다 셰든데 무슨 예낭에 된데 무슨 예 나시에 무슨 차로 다 다른 쇼베로 다른 쇼베 등에 셰니에나 디 단다 세미나 텐디 요디 데다 세미나 텐디 요디 데리 가서 똑바 로와 똑바 어디 쳐와 식으로
So, to give an illustration of the difference, when you see something with your 5 sensory perceptions, eyes, ears, and so forth, we consider that to be a direct perception, because if you take the ear consciousness hearing sound, it with its uncommon condition of the auditory sense power, it directly hears the sound. So, for example, if I talk to Geshe-la and Geshe-la hears my words, that's what we call a direct perception. However, remembering some sound that you heard this morning, that's not considered the direct perception. That's a thought process or a conceptual perception.
제가데 당기데 직 텐심나 텐데 요디 똑바로 봐. 온시 다디나시 나고그라 나실레 티카도 가야지. 티마카도 가야 돼. 아니 어딜라다 나이 무슨 소리로. 지나시 제 칼라사도 제 로녀야 될 무슨 해야 돼. 카도글라 통도야 돼. 셰고로 탄다.
So this memory, as we said, is not considered direct perception. It's like a conceptual mind. But things like smelling, a smell, that's considered direct perception. Tasting is considered a direct perception. So it's like immediate, kind of like like straight. You'd almost say straight perception. Like that.
다드네 이를 맞아요인데 이 중은 라요인데 베나 당안저 당당안저 당 라마슈다 수수교 타마버들라 이 중은 다 신심시병 것이와 신기생 신내토 대제라니 참마이니도 세고라디 네 신기심 카두글라 시에도야 된다 연구여라 도저다 들어와 이 중은 세들 이 중은로
So then, this covers off the first 5 of the direct perceptions. The ordinary sense direct perceptions. Then we have the mental sense direct perception. And so an example of this would be beings who have meditational abilities like karma abiding. Then they have the ability to directly perceive others' minds. So this perception of another's mind directly is considered a mental direct perception.
다디네 디 참마이니 디 베나 단당한저 베나가란저 단다 미다과다 줌젠라데 내가저 미다봉은 숨땡한저 토도 말에 미시게도 도 말에 먼저 이기 미다봉은 숨도 도고 말에 먼저 줌젠라데네다 미다와 튼지스 또 똑바로 똑배 또도고라 똑바 똑배도 튼지단 데로고라 튼지단 나와디단 데로고라 튼지데단 데니 또연데 무슨 도 두고면도 와가서는 튼지 코 깝되기도 무슨 돈 두고면도 튼지디 깝되기요 무슨 돈 두고요 말에 미다과다 다음에도 들어
So this things that are like conceptual realizations or understanding, then we should say things like understanding impermanence. We can't perceive impermanence. Ordinary beings like ourselves can't perceive impermanence directly. However, we can understand it via generic image, or this meaning generality. But then we can't say that it's a direct perception, because this meaning generality impedes the perception being direct, because we have to understand it via that.
다디 먼저 배된대로 자네 오래 배로와 배 단다 먼저 똑배 추 유도 니 추욕반나시 되대요. 추욕반 오마당 추되어는 싫어. 오마
Okay.
오마당 추되나 아니 추 당마요 말아. 다 오마데 바바바바바 매우잖아. 아니 추주 당마 차제. 아니 주베 당마질레기도 아니 어디나시 디 아니 베나 포버라버지나 오마룩샤이나 아니 오마디게 파르데 추 당마딜레나 아니 포베딜레 메도다 근데 주모딘데 통고다 추유나 추 당마 추지고 있는 통고다 오마룩나 통고면도 오마데다나 디 포베 나로 메도 요다 진짜라 요 통고면도 오마디 파세 추 당마 있는 통고도 되나시 유 똑베게 유도 든지 립쟁원에 다이렉트 통도고요 뭐 무슨 차고 말해 다디야 곰잡제 아니 미다바 무슨도 떠러 다음에 무슨도 박외주의 동무도 아니 당기 오마데 파세오나시 추 당와드나시 아니 셈 이지 무슨 되겠다 미다바 무슨도 또 두고요 되네다 제가 팍발라야 돼 어디네 레고여다 팍발라야 돼 네 레고여다
So tambo di tonchile teni tog teni di sawa teni nosun tog jela.
어, 네. 박외 내가 뭐시 미다보다 다음에 또 두고요. 말해서 무슨
Awesome. So we can give an example of this, right? Like this generic image we could say is like mixing milk with water. Because when you pour milk into water, then of course the water is not clear. Right? You can't see through it. So, but if you slowly were to somehow strain the milk out and were left with clear water, then you could see through that clear water. So if you put like milk in, like, I don't know, a pond or something, and it was all milky water, you couldn't see the flowers or anything at the bottom, right? But if you then slowly cleared that water out, then you can see everything, flowers and the rocks and everything that are in the pond at the bottom. So this is like the generic image. So if we take impermanence or selflessness, for example, in the beginning, you understand it via this generic image. You don't have a direct understanding of it. But then slowly, as you meditate more and more, then it becomes clearer and clearer, and you're less reliant on this generic image until the point where you can realize impermanence or selflessness directly. At that point, it's like the clear water, the milk's gone, or the generic image is gone, and you're able to perceive directly. And then this is an Arya being's perception. Only Arya beings have this ability. Oh, so it's the direct mental perception in the mind of an Arya being, because only Arya beings have the ability to perceive emptiness and so forth directly, or selflessness and so forth directly. So this is mental direct. So then we go on to self-knowers and self-known direct perceivers. Is that page 16
of 시베고 코랑 시베고랑 시베서 저래다. 그봐. 랑릭스디 랑랑이 릭버서. 시베고랑 시베도 버서 저래더라고. 오케이. 다음부 다시로 버지. 틱디 다시로. 셈랑이 랑이 시베서 저래. 랑릭스디 통고 틱디 된다데.
Right. So when we look at this rang rig, which is self-knower. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's pretty much as close as a definition, translation as you're going to get. So this rang means self, but it has this connotation of, so rang rig is to know itself, but it's like self-knowing itself, right? So, and literally what it comes to mean is mind knowing itself. So mind knowing an aspect of that same mind.
다디 저랑서 곰자로 내 뒤진라다 욱중우 욱중우의 장가 규릉보 잠나 간산질라 남도 차장파 세제 쌤 당와 란신지 하고 그러와 디 하고니 디 다음에 쌤 다음에 차 세베 차 외그란신 세베 차 세디 쉐보 코나래 디 수이 신고르스나 쉐보 코나 신고르다 진짜 쉐보 신이기 쉐바지 샤고다 코란 신이기 쉐바시 제가 디디 곰 잠나 연구요르다디 곰 잠나 냠뇽데 연구요르 뭐 딜라나레라고 거다 다디 단도마 띵 서브 테스트 도이나 아니 그 뒤기 차와틱스 요든 조스로 봐. 뒤쪽이 차와틱스 세링가마데 세릭 치마 nga지 뇽에서 오시 뇽뇽레스 뇽제 타데 요레서 온다. 데다 그래서 곰 잡는 연구래. 단다 라리 그란시아도 먼저 곰 우중우 곰 주는 거 잡냐? 남도 중 올랐다. 이제 당일 우중우들 남는 뒤라.
Okay. So an example of this is if you were doing breathing meditation, and after doing breathing meditation for a long time, then your thoughts start to dissipate and your mind becomes clear, and then you might have this experience of this clarity of mind, something like that. This clear and knowing aspect of the mind might appear to you. But if you ask, well, what's perceiving this, or who is perceiving this clear aspect of the mind? Well, it's the mind itself that's perceiving it. So, and this only comes, like this experience only comes through actually meditating. But when you dig a little deeper into it, there is a delay, like the mind that perceives the mind comes a tiny bit later. Does that make sense? So there's what's being perceived is perceived in the next moment, by the next moment of mind, right? So they do this self-problem. So it's the later moment of mind perceiving the previous moment of mind. The later moment mind perceiving the previous moment of clarity.
칼라 나마마 치마치마 좋아 연구도 신보진 연구도 영화디 들어봐서 아니 영화디 니 셔버려 봐 할라 신부 영화디 아니 수요하고 그러서는 하고 니데 셔버려 어디리.
Okay. So also if we have like a delicious taste, right, in our mouth, or a taste in our mouth, and then we have a recognition of that taste. Well, who recognizes that taste, right? It's the mind, again, recognizing, because this taste consciousness is also consciousness. It's a mind recognizing this taste, but it comes a moment after the actual experience of the taste.
제가 영어 그런다. 영어 그런 시비서로 차도다다.
So it's the mind experiencing itself.
제가 어디 네다 단다 둡대나라. 아니 도대와 샘잠바 뭐란요 숨지디라리 켈렌치고요로 지라마와 오마텐주와라리 켈렌치고요 말다.
Okay, so when we look at the tenon systems, it's the Sutra school, the Great Exposition school, and the autonomous aspect of the Middle Way school that believe in this self-knower. The mind-only school and the consequence aspect of the Middle Way school don't hold to a self-knower.
Susle, the Northstar. Simzamba, Dodewa, Umaranjo Sumji, Rari Kellen Chigres, Rari Kellen Grace, Chiramawa, Tenjuva Kellen Gumares.
Oh, okay.
Generosity. Nomase.
Maybe, yeah, I think so. I think I got that wrong. So it's the Chidamara Kelling.
Chidamawa, Umatenjuva Kelling Gumares.
Okay, so yeah. So sorry, the Great Exposition School and the Consequence School don't hold to it. It's the mind-only school and the Sutra school and the autonomous aspect of the Middle Way. They hold to the self-knower.
Yeah.
I thought the Middle Way school thought that these two would arise simultaneously, like the awareness and the object simultaneously arise.
So for for a self-knower? Okay, so I thought that the Chittamatra school, the mind, perceiving the mind would arise simultaneously according to their understanding. So the rangrig tang rangrigi yul, the same sambal tani nyamdu yongere marebe. Rangrig tang rangrigi yul nyamdu yong.
Dadi yul lago yor, khonzo yul lago. Chesan rarikele nying nyimdo yul lago. Rarikele nying rangrig tang rangrig nyo nyimdo yor ta. Di tanda nge laya di khala wasana, ta nganzo ma ngoy nezu tanda rangrig yo marata. Nge tangi gom jamne shingir laya di rata.
Okay, so yes, they do believe that the self-knower and the object of that self-knower arise simultaneously. What I was explaining with the meditation, because in reality there is no self-knower. So, and this is why, because I was pointing out that when you experience the meditation, then you see that they don't arise together.
당보 gom 잡대나. 그래서 gom 잡는 게 돼. rāngrīk jīkpa nīmdō yōpa rōpa chī nāwa yōngurwa. Inā te mā tīng sāru rōna, anī nīmdō mēwa, ngā mā chīma nyōwa rōpa chī tindē kāla, tā tī līgu yor, tā līgu yor, tā tī.
So, yeah, initially it does appear that they kind of, the mind perceiving and the object that it's perceiving arise together. So the self-knower and its object arise together. But when you actually break it down a little bit further, there is a time they don't arise simultaneously. So that's kind of why it doesn't.
다디 페진 따라가서 스스 냠뇨 매니 냠뇨 매와 달 한부 대세 자라 아니 라리케 말레니 선다 튜가지 샤디 약쇼 차고요라 이나다 다다나 라리케레니 그 두냠도 요래 다다라래.
So yeah, if you break it down, like when you're first experiencing it, this is an explanation of why. So the tambo di rangrig kelingre.
Rangrig yodo, tunyam yodo, nyongye da nyongden niga nimdo yodo yongora.
So yeah, when you're doing the experience, it does first appear that there is a self-knower because they do appear to arise simultaneously with the object of perception. But when you break it down a little bit further in the experience, you can see that they don't arise simultaneously, and this is kind of a way of establishing this absence of the self.
That di nyo la den de ukjung gom di tai ya shure jinan thalang shin da manggo yor del ukjung gom di jab na khale namdo nyur do ra namdo nyur do namdo nyur do ani namdo changma ba gawe chadila ani tongsang so re seri charo le di ne ga la da ko nimdo le ye de ora ba jiro ta di ran rik sa pe di le ji ko la go zu gu yor de ne go zu gu yor.
Okay. So although there's many ways of establishing it, we can use the meditation on the breath as probably the clearest example or the best example. So perhaps what happened was that this kind of meditation was occurring, like breathing or focus, to the point where the mind became very clear. And then at that point, there appeared to be this perception and this mind perceiving it arising simultaneously. So that's maybe where this belief in this self-knower was started, or this.
먼저 쉐베 신이라 세시 릭볼라죠. 오 딜링거다. 너무 쉐베 된다 신고로 세시 릭볼라. 세베란신 릭버사데 타왕 진베란신지 된데지 하고 있는데. 다디 쉐바레 샤스데 네 신디 쉐바 하고 그런 단단한 쉐바 하고 두고요 말 남도게. 립제로 주민이지 립제. 곰 전음에서 남도디 매우 소도에 요말다. 데 메람 잡네 소도고 말에. 다디 인지민지에서 곰 잡네 다 차고 그래요.
So this is probably how also this definition of clear and knowing came about for the mind, because through this meditation, then that clarity and this tangwa is also like clear, but like in an unimpeded way, like unobscured would be better. So there's this clarity and there's this unobscured nature as well. So this is only comes about, or this perception only comes about through meditation. You can't do it through prayer or these other ways of bringing it about, or aspiration alone. You actually have to do this meditation to come about to this clarity and knowing aspect of the mind.
다도 제다랑 릭 책데 친이들 되어 됐죠. 다당부 데 친이니 샤도 당보 진이의 여체 다 진이들은 진나랑 리기 진이라도 진이 돌듀가 되와 돌듀바디 쇼트 되와 그래서 진남라데 가서는 진남세야 될라 유 담제 디자인이난 거래 전남당 진남사지 전남로도 유 스타 샤발레 셴베 숙당 다당 티당 로다 렉자도 졸라 데드마이 딜라 전남제 진남스디 샤바들라 가고 샤바 저는 샤바 진이데 네 라리그레서 왔다 진남스디 샤바 진이데 네 다 라리그레서 왔다 대충이 돌드가 되다
Okay. So this first definition here, well, there's two definitions. So look at the first one, self-know, that which is the aspect of an apprehender. Okay. So in the Tibetan, it's just zinam, and then this goes on to say that when there's only two things that can be apprehended, or two aspects that can be had, there's zinam and tonnam. So ton is like meaning, it means something external, like smell, sight, visual form, something like that. So this zen means mind, is the aspect of mind. So it's almost like it's the aspect of apprehending mind, and then the other one would be the aspect of apprehending other. So other being other than mind.
다 진이 개버들라 참나 안에 세르도다 저잔데 그 타고 요전 진이 니샤도
So yeah, perhaps when we go through the other definition, it will become clearer. So it's a bit complicated. That's why we have two definitions.
다 똑보다 대신이 저잔다 라릭데 똑보 말해서 왔다 방보데 똑보 말해서 똑보다 대신 공오데 똑보 말해서 바직제서 세부직 차서
So if we look at this next definition, that which is the aspect of an apprehender is free from conceptuality and is not mistaken. So this free from conceptuality means basically it's a non-conceptual mind.
똑보다 대신 맞추바 봐. 야 똑보다 대화이나 추시인이들 여러 가지 미시게 나와니 통하다 가는 거 통하다 미시도서 똑보다 대화를 들래 그 추시를 봐. 저단다 제주 니와디 맞추고 거랬다.
So then it goes into this non-mistaken aspect, because there are mistaken direct perceptions. So you can, like the eye consciousness seeing two moons, or perceiving a blue snow mountain, something like that. This is an example of a mistaken direct perception. So it eliminates that aspect of mistakenness.
다 저단 진남사데 다 당기 드셔져나 제주 숨도 똑바다 태와 맞추고 임바 진남이 임바 근데 제주 숨도 상스나는 안에 아직 차로 그래서다.
And then it goes this aspect of an apprehender. This is zinam. So yeah, this is the last part of the definition. So
다 딜라이와 숨샤도와 채마치 제시치 나로망에와 숨시라.
And then it goes through three divisions: prime cognizers, subsequent cognizers, and awareness to which the object appears but is not ascertained.
다 당보 채마 인게도 가래 먼저 미시 냠스녀외라는 무슨 계직 당보들 미시와 먼저 다 당보 도스래다 당보 도스라는 야고 당보 먼저 메도마부터 미시저와 미시 코란께와라 제조 가르고 미겐다 겐데마다겐 숨고고라 와 아래 미겐 메도디 메도마부디체 와 아니 다겐데 ombusu진 당와디체 데마다겐 체데 말로디 주메 아니 셰와디체 유디 숨나디네 미시디 제그라다 미시디 제그라 이 미시디다 무슨 단다 ombu 무슨 테마인 바 ombu 무슨 임바다 어 당보 대시행 그랬다
Okay, so when we look at this example of this, for example, the first moment of a self-knower knowing direct perceiver that experiences an eye consciousness. So if we take an eye consciousness perceiving a flower, then there's three conditions, right? There's the object condition, there's the dominant condition, and there's the immediately preceding condition. So the object condition is the flower itself, the object being perceived. The dominant condition is the sense power. So in this case, the eye sense power. And then the immediately preceding condition is the previous moment of consciousness. So when these three come together, then the eye consciousness perceiving.
엄봉우스음 테마들와 무슨 테마들와.
Oh, sorry. The
엄봉우스음 테마들.
1.9 the direct sense perception arises.
다 딘데 엄봉우스음 테마데 임바 디스위싱 그래라나. 다디 엄봉우스음 요니 그라릭디시 그래라고. 다 디자 니버도자마다.
So then comes like having arisen this sensory direct perception of the eye consciousness. Who knows that or what perceives that? And that's this rangrig, this self-knower. It's written here. The first moment of a self-knower direct perceiver that experiences an eye consciousness.
Oh, the
previous moment of mind consciousness. So it's the immediately preceding condition, which is the previous moment of consciousness. Is that it? Okay. Yeah, Dixon.
아, 되다. 믹시 냠스녀에 라링우스 깨지 당고랍다 제가 믹시와 당보 믹시 거나 하고 그러면서 믹시 15 코나 수하고 그래서나 아니 디 냠스녀 라리 되겠다. 시그레스테 깨지 당보디 다 제말에스테 혼.
So first we establish this eye consciousness is established, right? When these conditions, three conditions come together. Then there's the self-knower, which is the one that knows the eye consciousness. And the first moment of that is the direct, self-knowing direct perceiver.
그래서
Yeah.
디스나나다 제시디 샬레오레 미신 냠스녀에 라리 깨지 니바디 아니 제시르다.
Sorry, that was not quite right. It's the self-knowing prime cognizer, as it's translated here. Because it's the first moment. So then the second one is the subsequent cognizer of the definition. Is that clear? So there's the three, there's the self-knower prime cognizer, the self-knower subsequent cognizer, and then an awareness which appears, but the object is not ascertained. So the first moment of the self-knower apprehending the or experiencing the eye consciousness, that's an example of the self-knowing prime cognizer. Yeah, the first moment of that, right? The second moment of that self-knowing knower experiencing the eye consciousness, the second moment of that is an example of a subsequent self-knowing subsequent cognizer, the second division.
But
there's two ways you can put that, which slightly different meaning. So when you say a self-knower valid cognizer is the first moment that the self-cognizer sees as the eye consciousness, or is it the first moment that the self-knower arises? You see what I'm saying? Because Geshe mentioned that the self-knower arising is 1 seconds later.
Okay, I see the difficulty. So if you can say that this example, is it the first moment of the self-knower arising? Or is it the first moment of the self-knower? Because Geshe said the self-knower arises a moment later. So, di self do di kiran samsan di rangnig kechik jema lebgire. Di rangnig mare so di self
jema legirse
pena tambo di mikshe yongire and di kechik jema di rangnig yongire
mar jema la gyo mare.
Re.
당모 미시 두고로 미시 코란 단 뒤냠데 님돌라 요라는.
So for those that hold to a self-knower, they say it comes in the same moment.
님들
simultaneously. The uma tengyuba di killing. So what we're talking about now is from the views of the school that do hold to the self-knower, and they hold that it arises simultaneously with the eye consciousness. So from their perception, what the reality of it might be different, but what they hold to is that the I consciousness and the self-knower arise simultaneously.
예. 다 니바디 네 제시 자로 그러다.
And then the second moment of that self-knower is the subsequent cognizer. Okay, is this, yeah, we're good?
다 somebody there's no that how is your da.
Okay. So the third one's even more confusing than the first two.
tinshina kalabdorasna tangjinbe yuji sa dewashiwa yimba ani nyamsinyoraring musumlado.
Okay, so
ti karalasana tangjinla de hindugi dubdajire ro.
Okay, so we have this.
ti konzo kalago orasna nganzo yula yigi dewayorwa. Dewala de shewa marilago. Dewa shewa marilago.
Okay.
세상 대화 시와 많이 뭐디 대화디 시와래와 서로와 대화디 시와라와 이나 고저 대화 켈린 지게요 말데 대화디 시와 말해서 거래 이나 대화 시와 인사 대 냠스녀라리 대화 시와 나래 이나 간산되게 켈린 지금에 인사 아니 콜라 나라망에 와차다
건다 디 대화디 시파
말해서 그래 리얼리티 대화 시와 레라고 그래 먼저 낭바게 나 장쟁이 대화시와 말해라고 그래. 그래서 그주지 대화시와 냠스녀라릭데 대화시와라 아니 나라망에 차려. 그래서 그 나와리 그 뇌에 잔두고요 말아. 그런 간사디 켈렌시도고요 말아.
간사디 대화디
시와 말해서 그래.
셰파 말에 켈렌기래.
켈렌기로. 아니 제가 그 지그라릭데 대화시와 난그래. 이나 진두고 말해. 그또 두고 말해. 그래서 간사디 켈렌시면도 그래다 두슬람네 베진 케세 와차로 디니 직바리 데 시니 자로 숨 되는마 반제 상마 직바리 로단데 디 메나 제마디 디 직랍 디 메나 장괴외 주지 사야지 직랍나 야오면도 메 디스펜지 카세르면도 베지 대화시와 사야지
the self-knower direct receiving of continues seeing bliss as being a consciousness a self-knower direct receiving the continued by the shishis
장진배 주지 슬랍다 하디나
Well, that looks like the same.
니 직바리 제라바지 대화시와 군이 직바리 당보다 니와니 시시 직바리
So Gonzo Kelendi Dewadi Shepa Mara you know did Senilanga Shepa Yun.
Shepa re reality Shepa re ina Shepa nyamsnya rarik de Gonzo nana manga chare sheta.
Okay, so the first example is this Hindu school the Shamaka
ko jugi dewadila kona jugi dewadi ko Shepa maresa gore.
Shepa Mara Sungire.
Gonzo Kelen shigure.
So they don't believe that this experience of bliss in the mind stream is a consciousness. So then the self-knowing, direct perceiving, the continuum of Shamaka that experiences bliss as a consciousness is therefore said to be an appearance that is not, when it appears but is not apprehended. Because they don't hold to this bliss as being a consciousness.
Pena dindela nandigre yamena ro mijigi ro mijigi medodi dires kaza di medo mare di medo ngone mare di jig medore ro
Okay, plus
di jig medore di medo ngona mare lana ani nga mixila medodi nge medodi nangre ina nge medo imba de nge dog tu mare kaza nge di medo mare la gor juda dil nganala manga charda ko
So it's like the example if you have these flowers and you think that they're plastic, right? Even the icon, when you're perceiving them, you cannot apprehend the flower. You cannot apprehend the flower because you can't have the apprehension of the flower because in your mind you think it's not a flower because it's plastic. So therefore you can't have that apprehension of the flower.
Dinde shoyore pena dinde mangboyore. 먼저 수수 이제 매비셔라. 내 차감나라 오마 민두라. 이나 내 차감나라 오마 두라. 나나 심나라 오마 민두서. 이제 채나. 내 오마 통그래 될래. 내 뭐 말해. 네 주스래.
If you firmly believe there's no milk in this cup, even if there is milk in the cup, like this cup's full of milk, you firmly 100% believe that there's no milk in the cup, then you can't apprehend milk in the cup. You'll apprehend juice or you'll apprehend something else because your belief that there's no milk in the cup is there, that inhibits your apprehension of the milk, right?
저는 건석 단도 인지 측을 찍도 북이 차감나는 peanut butter 통말을 하시도. Man can't see in the fridge peanut butter. 그래. 그래. 어디?
Oh, the man look. Okay, I got it.
어디.
So it's a bit like you're so convinced that something's there that you have a man look and you can't see it, right? Even that it's right in front of you, you can't see it. I mean,
어디 나라면 어디다.
So that's appearing but not apprehending. I don't know. That's what Kate keeps coming up with. Kate's favorite, the man look.
근데 망고 딩하나서 처음은 나는데 망고 열어 안에서는.
Right, but in reality, we do have that experience in our lives, right? Like we can sometimes something's right in front of it, but we don't actually apprehend it.
베나 닐라고 나는 제 진시 숨바데 가르서나 장배외 주지 제와서만 양수녀라 리설로도 장배외스니데 제와서만 켈렌치고 말이야.
Okay.
참마이나 무슨 직보면서 제와서만 줌젠라데네 신야지도 이 참마 말해서 거라.
Okay.
그 줌젠라데네 신야지 제와데 참마 거라 말해라고 그래. 이나 그
말해.
그러나 줄에 열어 참마데 열어.
Okay.
이나 그디 그러나 줄에 여와디 라리기 용그래 네 또 도구면서 나나만 차래. 그래서 나그 간상 켈렌치면도 대 참마 말해 참마 찍려면 되스라고 그러고. somebody yagoda somebody.
So then the third example, it gives it maybe a bit clearer because it says Nihilisio, one sort of sect, doesn't believe in a inferential valid cognition. They believe if a valid cognition exists, it has to be direct. Prime cognizer here, so it'd be what do they say? Inferential cognizer has to be a prime cognizer. Another translation is a direct valid cognition as opposed to just a direct, inferential valid cognition as opposed to a direct valid cognition. So they believe that it has to, if it's a valid cognition, it has to be a direct one. So this idea that you can get a valid cognition through reasoning, they don't hold to that. So then they would have this perception of, even though they have this inferential valid cognition, or this inferential cognizer in their mind stream, they're unable to perceive it because they don't believe that such a thing exists. So they perceive it, though then it's appearing to them, but they're not apprehending it.
제가 간사디 먼저 셰야라 켈렌 수수 응원의 이지던 켈렌체나 또야 딜레하요래. 이지 마셔나나 또야디 하고 싶자고 가서나 쌤기 록바다 가는 딘데고 그러. 이지 디레스 이지죠. 녜디 메도레스 이지지는 녜람삼 메도 임바고라 아디 지그레 데다 사마다나 아니 다디 메도 임바데 녜 가두이나 셰알 카고요.
So this is an example of how belief influences us so strong. Perceptions, right? So if you fully convinced, like somebody's told you that these flowers are plastic, and you believe that, then you're unable to perceive. Even though you see it directly and you smell it, you won't believe that that's a real flower because you've been convinced that it's plastic. And so that will affect your perception or your understanding.
제가 이지디다 wrong message 간라 이지 체되기 위해서는 먼저 리얼리티다 통두고요 말에.
Because this belief, our wrong beliefs are constantly sending us the wrong messages. We're actually unable to perceive the real nature of reality.
다란릭디 데데스 투즈데스 고거래. 얘네 저런서 가고도나 상무 망고마다는데 칼레칼레 싱그레스.
So it is. The self-know is a pretty tricky topic, and it is quite difficult to get straight away. But if you think about it more and more, it will become clearer. If you don't think about it, well, then you probably won't understand it.
나릭 단다 이거네디 로정해지려면서 야오시 맞는데.
It took me 15 years to understand myself, so good luck to everybody else. So I felt like after 15 years, I've kind of got on top of this self-knower.
그래서나 먼저 뭐마데 로리나로 딘데 미시다 겨우면도 와데. 데다 기겐도 데시 잡든지 데스 가보도 알람자와. 아니 데다 로정아 제라 남데 참남데 루스음바도 저와. 남들 류스마 류스베 나라 아니 데이터 배 개버 쇼라 나도 디 subject 더 믹스에 롭좀 망고 첸데 아다 신도 하고다
So the reason being is that, like in this awareness and knows, this lyric text, it doesn't really go into much detail, right? The teacher's explanation was what you'd kind of rely on, but when you hear it, it's actually it's not that easy to fully understand, right? But I felt when I actually came to study the third chapter of valid cognition, that then, which was 15 years later, then I kind of got it, right? Like I was able to sort of clearly understand what the self-knower is through that explanation in there.
어디네 다데네 당조 무슨 디로다 내조 무슨 다데 데슬라고 내조 무슨
Okay, so now we're moving on to the yogic direct perceiver.
다 내조 무슨 당기 가서 이중 무슨 미다바 무슨 데베 이중 무슨 제와 박배 주지
Okay.
디 양자 삼년나라 출련 거랬어
So now you have to wind back a bit. You remember when we were talking about the direct realization of impermanence in the mind of an Arya being? So bring yourselves back to that.
디 칸데스 레요레 디간 저당 거래라
So how does that come about?
디 주지 아니 미다바다 다음에 무슨 도과디 칸데스 레요레다 그봐 칸데스
무슨 토크
칸데차레
So this direct realization of selflessness or impermanence, how does this come about?
지단 딜라 아니 당보야 당보다 람 줄라마지 공라 when teaching lamina 신에 예와도 토고래와 신에다 당보 토고래 다 신에 톱사고 잠예 되어 말에 가서 그래 아니 리치도 말에 가서 그래 미다고 또도 말에 아니 항동 다 신에 안에 아니 셰럽 미다고도 왜 셰럽 고면도 아니 신에 안에 미다고도 그러와 아니 항동 차동아 다 디네가라 아니 당보 튼지스기 또거든지 근데야 곰자 신
디젤라 tonchi.
야야야 곰자
락탕탕
신에달 항도 숭도데 님돌
디니
디야야 곰자 아니 셀 아니 미다고 무슨 떠야지 실라 숭리 띵이진을 떠고 왔다
So tambo
신에도
tenants 요래 tonchi 냠도 요래
요래 디야 ton지도 바바바 세도 아니 지메 인데 무슨 차라고 어디
So I was just clarifying the order for that. So it's this union of calm abiding and special insight. So what happens is, first of all, you develop your meditation and you develop this calm abiding, right? And also you develop this special insight. And then this union of calm abiding and special insight, this still realizes impermanence or selflessness via this generic image. But as you meditate more and more, this generic image becomes more and more subtle until eventually this union of calm abiding and special insight no longer relies on the generic image, can realize impermanence directly, and at that point it becomes this yogic direct perception. Okay, so if we go through the definition step by step, it'll become clearer.
가르스나 다당보 진이 순냐 랑 투모마에 배다겐데 실라순르지 띵인진라 되네 개버슬라송아체다
Okay.
규디 가르제르스나 투모마에 배다겐 실라순르기 띵인진 당게다 미다골 미베 신가순리 다멜 미베 실라순리 띵인진 텔라되네 개버레스다 어데다
So as with the other direct perceivers, it's starting off with this independence on its own uncommon empowering condition, right? But in this case, the uncommon empowering condition is a meditative stabilization, which is the union of calm abiding and special insight. So that you could say is like the cause for the yogic direct perceiver. This empowering condition, which is the meditative stabilization, which is the union of calm abiding and special insight.
어디 가르스나 똑바단 대신 맞추고 그봐 어디 똑바단 대신 맞추고레스
So it's non-mistaken and free from conceptuality. So like the order in the Tibetan is always going to be different to the English, so you just have to bear with me. It's going to jump back and forth. But the next part in the Tibetan definition is free from conception and non-mistaken.
다 되네 수줄에 요래라나 네 박외줄에 요래스라.
And then whose continuum is it? It's the continuum of the superior, which is a translation for this Bhakva or Arya.
다그 가리 또 그래 라위나 아니 신리 글라서 미다고 또 그래. 동반이 또 그래. 다음에 또 그래. 저한테 다 단계 랑리레 신차종 미다고데 셰발레 신차종 신리고 미다고 또 그래. 다음에 또 그래서 그래.
So then it's an other knower, and why is it an other knower? Because the object that it realizes is not mind, it's other than mind. So impermanence is other than mind, selflessness is other than mind, right? So that's why it's an other knower, because it's knowing its object that it knows is an object that's not mind, or it's not its own mind.
That's 세부차종.
Is that clear now? The last one, the other knowing. So it's an other knower because impermanence or selflessness is other than mind, right? So other knower means knowing other than mind, and the object that it realizes, which is impermanence or selflessness, is other than mind.
어때? 신세디 랑세디 셰발샤 신세디 셰발레 신베 추라 코나네 딱다 차로.
So when we talk about rang or self-knower, it's knowing mind. So other knower is knowing a phenomena that's other than mind. Rangisim, shingisim.
말이 랑다 신심샤 요마다 셰발라 랑다 셰발레 신베 추라 신스디 다 다가랑 삼샤나 아니 세부차로.
Some mishinbergisim.
디샤움 디 셈셈 미 셈발라데 책디 도마다 두세나 투도.
Okay, right. Yeah, okay. So yeah, understand it in that way. A self-knower knows mind, and an other knower knows a phenomena other than mind.
어디 셰발레 신베 추 신스나나 신리그레. 셰바 직보 신이데 랑리그레 당 모두 샤고.
Yeah. But if you know, like a perception that knows another mind, then that's another knower. It's knowing your own mind. So you could say it's a phenomena other than its own mind, if that makes sense. So rangisim shingire. Shingisim shenadini.
Dinde dugo mar, jodi lado mar. Di lamda konzo turo la sanga tangine. Rangda shensa di mi shingi sim da ge shege yo mar ele. Sheba de la ranche, sheba le shimbe chule shense. Di shenye de la anir shenri. Rang sheba shenye de la ranri go dagran diksar.
Okay, but to keep it clearer, if it knows, it's like knowing a mind, and a knower that knows a mind is a self-knower. And a knower that knows another phenomena other than mind is an other knower.
Da delaya, yewa delaya, ane nejong usumdan jeshi musumdan jeshi ni mishiyo marwa.
So when there's direct perceivers, there's prime and subsequent cognizers, which are yogic direct perceivers. So there's only two divisions rather than three.
다당고 나 미다봉 웃음도베 계직 당보디 내종 웃음디 데리 가자 웃음 참말에. 아니 내종 웃음 계직 이버디 제시래다. 독순도베리 버사데 호들.
I'm just wondering if it's in here. No.
Okay,
it doesn't have examples in here, but you know, the first moment of a yogic direct perceiver perceiving impermanence or selflessness, first moment is what would say is a prime yogic direct perceiver. Yeah, or you could say a direct valid yogic perceiver. And then the second moment of that is the yogic subsequent cognizer. Second and third and fourth moments, subsequent moments are the yogic subsequent cognizers. So in the mind of an Arya, there's no appearances that are not apprehended. So that's why that third. The reason is because if an object appears to an Arya, then automatically they apprehend it.
한다 실라 숭딘사디 간저 뒤중 알아서 다 뒤중 님의 초회난 게 kumdi 당도 디스 셰비나 당기데 파괴질 요러 다도 나가나서 가셔야한데 다 곰잡으로서도 배 인지민지기 유직기 제제 대과디 다 최고라 하나 저 시내당 항동 송들이 곰자 되게 다 신이 상화디 다 간저 요말데 된 다워든 간저 데라 다디 규딩 간저 루고라다 룹초고라 간저 배나 간저 단다 저랑 저런 상무 간도치고요라 배나 쇼베 군론제 다 잠도 domba dongo yorwa kunjo son jamdo den bin prayer mangbu chigoyora ani semdi prayer kan la de ro myolam ge di den kan la de ani myolam de je den je debe kan la simmayin ba cheje myolam de den ro do na chran la ni shine da langdong song de ba dawo ji yor dawo ji chran la ne dawo ji yor dawo ngone da yamara de ngone marwa da nga zo de dawo re dawo 가서나 시내 다워 가서나 심디 간도 간라 내대라 나탄다 주주직 간도 지기 심디 대간라 내대요 디 심디 내려와 다 간도 지도다 디네 군조를 잡스도고래 산제 잡스도고래 찬주 심 지역고래 동반이 공고래 심디 간라 담도 땅땅땅데 셔럽디 고명도네 심 미과 대간라 미제 양자다 멸람자야다 셔럽되야다 내 채팅이 데 셔운데 디다 리더버 차서 가서 그래 항동을 항동 제도마 다워 신이 담아다 말이다 다워지래다 네 야제도네 이제 명문에 차오라다 라야
because like so when we talk about this, if we talk a little bit more about this union of karma body and special insight, this meditative stabilization, right? So this idea of keeping the mind focused in one point is something like this union of karma body and special insight. I mean, I think the word used is a simile quite often. So an example of this would be if you wake up in the morning and you're doing some prayers in the morning, right? And you're very focused. You're doing your refuge and your prayers without your mind being distracted. So it's quite focused, right? Then this would be a simile for this calm abiding, this aspect of being very focused. And as the mind stays on point, and you think very clearly when you take refuge, and you think about selflessness or impermanence in these things, or more specifically selflessness, if the mind stays on that object and clearly clarifies it, then that would be a simile for the special insight. So it's similar to the special insight.
아니 산제 군조 미다고래 상마 미다고래 미다고래 삼삼든데 땅에 도나 대리 아니 단다 찬주서다 마라 다메레 군조스나 다메레 상마 다메레 삼다나 대조다다 두스나 도시라.
So for example, if you're taking refuge and you think that I'm impermanent, the objects of refuge are also impermanent, or you think that like I'm selfless, or this Buddha that I'm taking refuge in is also selfless, then that, as you have this focus and this understanding, then this becomes a simile for this special insight.
다디 치코 진다지 그런 삼다나 조금씩도 곰라니여로 조금 제금시여로 조금 사는 미과지가 셈샤다. 제가 수수심디 아니 간도 간라 시아시대로 왔다 간도 나라 단당아 아니 잠도 지기요. 단당아 찬주심 공부요. 단당아 심디 다다와 간라 대제 아니 내가 대 지기도나 될라 조금랑 해야 조금래 봐.
So the other way you could look at it would be the aspects of the placement meditation and the analytical meditation. So the ability to stay focused would be this similar to this placement meditation. So if you're doing your morning prayers or your daily practice and you think, okay, now I'm taking refuge, now I'm developing bodhicitta, and you stay focused on the aspect that you're doing, that would be like an example of this placement.
다디네 지난단달 항동라다 지 남에다 미다와도 줄라 똑과들 항동 진이상 샤고래 나랑도 단다 지 칸도연데 잠도 셔버들 마라야 동바레로 다메레 데메레 라신지 투어 마레 산제 군조 라신 투어 마레 나 잠동어 라신 투어 마레 상마 템바마 투어레 상마 템바마 투어레 상무다베 나네 지도베이나 아니 미바디 칸도연가라 네바 다다에 칸도연을 네바 칸시라 두스 상마 라신이 마도레 나야 라신 마도 상마 라신 마도레 템바마 투어레 상단투베이나 아니 지 제곰로 와 제곰 대단 제 제곰다 조금 니 숭들어 숭들어 님들.
So if while you were doing this as well, to get this special insight, you'd have to be thinking about like impermanence or selflessness or emptiness or something like that. So if you were doing this analytical meditation, simultaneously thinking that I'm selfless or not truly existent or existing from my own side, then, and the objects that I take refuge in, like for example, the Buddha that I take refuge in, is also selfless. And the act of taking refuge, or the essence of taking refuge, that is also selfless, not existing or empty, not truly existing or existing from its own side. So this is all an analytical meditation. So if you do this, then this becomes, this combined with this concentration becomes this combination of this placement and this analytical meditation.
제가 두중게 책도해야 되게 아니 수수 상담단으로 고치고요. 책디기 아니 나는 산제주든 소리는 산제주든 전주받다는 접수지 아니 도 책도인데 책디기 이제 삼로디 다 디렉션도 포지티브로 가라. 지금이 샘지고 로얄 베전체는 도토고 말해. 책디도나 책디 님도라 티도로. 답람디요다.
Yeah, the idea is that your mind goes together with the words, right? If you actually contemplate the meaning of the words, so when you say I take refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha, that if you keep focused on that, your mind goes with the words. Like if you just kind of try and put your mind there without the words, it doesn't really work. So the words like, tree is together. They go together with them. The mind goes together with the words.
먼저 책디 딘이라고 미견고도 공부 잡도만다. 내 커죽된거도 커죽으로.
So it's like the example of an old person who can't walk has to rely on a cane, and then they're able to move around with that.
제가 대야고요. 책디 아니 다 말한 상관을 되게 간단히고요. 아니 간단히 지 캘렌더에 다들 사마자 감라 제대는 쳐요 말아디 다다 나라 빼 개버상보다 간단히 여들을 간단히 책든지 던주라와디 단당아 책든지 던주라와 이 책디 단다든지 삼로 던주라와디 빼야고 인삼데 가오 다다발라 다다데 가오.
That's why keeping the mind in the present moment is so important, because if you're able to do that, and you're really focused, then you can think, okay, I'm going to be present, I'm really going to think about the meaning of the words. It creates a lot of power, energy to your practice.
어디다 실라순데기 띵이진데 다 데다버지 단단해다 이 두기네라고랑 하면서 곰자위드 탈랑당보데 삼바템보서야 그 탈랑적으로 니버디 다 셔럽 닝제당 셔럽 열제당야라당 하면서 곰자구다 탈랑로다 니가나 당한도 로고요다 간다 배전이 지구요다 간다라.
So this is going through this meditative stabilization, which is the union of karma, body, and special insight. Shows that it's important for us to combine both. So first we need to develop this stable mind, but we also need to join that with this development of our wisdom. So we need to follow these two techniques or methods to develop our mind.
어든데지 다드네 단다 파괴주의 내종 무슨 깨진이와도 제시래서와 이나 산제기 살라 남지 깨진이와도 제시 말해서 다디 시고래서.
So the 남킨디 나ጆ는 소미야?
남지는 종무슨 레다 내종무슨 레다 남지.
So
남지 레다 지리나리니가 이나라.
No. So then the second moment of a yogic direct perceiver is the yogic subsequent cognizer. But it goes on to say here that this omniscient mind of a Buddha, the all-knowing mind of the Buddha, is always a prime cognizer. It never has the subsequent cognizer.
남지 깨진이와저와 산제 시바 깨진이와디 제시 말했지.
So the second moment of this omniscient exalted wisdom, as it's translated here, is not a subsequent cognizer, it's a prime cognizer. Even though it's a yogic direct perceiver, it's not a subsequent cognizer.
산제기 시바이나 참마 무슨 참마이 베캬르다 들다 무슨 참마이니다 산제기 시바이나 무슨 참마이 베캬르.
So any perception in the mind of a Buddha has to be a prime cognizer or a direct valid perception.
레다 베나 안조 덴데로 삼단난 리고레 담보 안조
Sorry, direct prime cognizer.
베나 담보 안조 다 신의 토비 연구로와 아니 신의 톱 용도 신의 톱 아니 동반이다 다음에 또 용도 다 록시에도서 록바도서 매우 차로 그래요. 록바도서 매우 차로 록바도서.
So if we've developed this calm abiding and then conjoined that with this realization of emptiness,
무슨 말 또 잠시.
Okay, but combined with this realization of emptiness, then it's impossible for a mistaken consciousness to arise. Lakshi sama yongi mara.
용구 말 매우 차로라.
So all laksha, mistaken perceptions are eliminated.
다디네 야야야 루디 장갈라 아니 다 디는 다음에 이나면은 텐좀 용구 말아 봐다. 봐. 다 텐좀 용구 말아 봐. 안디 내 갈래 제시 다 파고 줄래 제시 가서 나라만 민도 왔다. 봐.
Okay.
나라만 민도 와. 아니 아디네 네 산제도도 네다 제시에 매버차.
Okay.
안 두센다 무슨 제서 차서.
So then at this point as we go up, then any doubt to emptiness is eliminated, to the existence of emptiness or the understanding. Any doubt towards that is eliminated. And as you realize, become an Arya being, then this appearing without apprehending, that's completely eliminated. Right?
근데 자감나서 peanut butter 통그레스.
So if you've lost your peanut butter, just get an aha to look in the fridge because they'll see it immediately, right? So you'll be right. Any Arya being will do. We'll find the peanut butter. And then as you go up further and further and you reach full enlightenment, then all subsequent cognizers are eliminated.
다 다리 라리기 기나서 곰라우 랑종라우 상무단 니간 단나야 와라. 셔 라릭사데 코란 신야데 칸데시기도 상무단 직제와. 아니 니버디다 신내단 항동 송도 되어 야마나 제곰다 조금 송도 되어디 칸데스 차기도 스티간라 곰디에스 잠나야 와라.
So for the meditation, you want to look at two things like what is the self-realizer, like how does the mind perceive aspects of itself, and then the second thing is how do we combine this placement and this analytical meditation, or this calm abiding and this special insight? How do we combine those?
Well, the discussion chigore. Discussion.
You have a discussion next week?
Yeah. Okay. A discussion danda dere da rari keleni dubda sudo sumadoro tange tande shebadi robde ngila dende di kelling do di gumzen tandalam sahamona o di dubda di kelling mena di kelling dende shena digore rari dubda su kelling chido su kelling chigmedo.
So for the discussion, you want to clarify which philosophical tenet systems hold to a self-knower and which ones don't. Don't go too much into the reasons why they do or don't at this stage. Just clarify which ones hold to it and which ones don't.
And what's
the difference between a self-knower and an other knower? And so this, I've closed the book, the calm abiding, the concentration, which is the combination of calm abiding and special insight. I think that was the translation. What is that? What's the meaning of that?
Well, 대단 다워진 안한적에 수수기 있다. 저와 냠내서 오래 수수기 간전치야를 수수 곰자나네야 수수근에 어딘데질래야 실라송디 시기도 써야 된대로. 배신다 수수 샤드네.
So then in our basic in our experience, what's our experience of something similar, like a simile of that? How do we relate to that?
다디 참로다나 야고쇼래. 데 가르스나 시에 망보지게 즉 간전치야도 상마야 아주다 최 멤버스 오래지다. 내가 뒤에나 야고 멤버스 오래는데 상로 그러고도 하고 가르스나 간전치 틱디 던다 하면 당보들 이버들 되게 팬더데 인스턴트 요마로 딩사 미상모 인스턴트 고어라 인스턴트 고여라 인스턴트 요마로 람자 용고 마로디
So
디 가고여라.
This it's really helpful when you're doing like your practices to have these understandings, because One, if you don't really understand what you're saying, the words clearly, then it's hard to get the real benefit. And the other thing is that, a lot of the time we want some sort of instant benefit or gratification, and it doesn't really come like that. So it comes much slower.
아니 그 지당은 저 대편도 요래 단다 카드 코로나야 책도 된 데비네. 먼저 대 베제 책도 된 데비나. 먼저 베제 책마다 미지를 깨지셔야 되나 아니 폴리틱 계자다 베다 단다 chen 면조던데 셔대 그러. 딜레 베제 책시 된 데는 디 책도 계산을 가로다라. 편도고다 원하시나?
So I mean, there is benefit in the sense it's beneficial to say, just saying the words in itself is beneficial. Like if we don't recite these prayers, we don't do these things, and all we talk about is politics and other things, then there's no benefit in just talking nonsense all of the time. It's good to say some valid stuff sometimes.
Oh, there. 제가 어디 이제 드링 된지 세션은 이거 안에 파발라 나라마 매바데 다 가르도스라. 데데 좀제 삼데 스탄데 당이데 슬랍상에.
Yeah, if you want something a bit more tricky, then why do arias not have this appearance without apprehension? So that
yeah. 아데죠. 아니 베절로야디 저는 자디요로디다 라고마로.
And as far as the reading goes, then you can follow the chart of what we're going to talk about. I mean, there's not much to read. Anyway, it's only a couple of pages. Okay, so we'll stop here.
Online? No online people. Okay. Okay.
Page 31. Page 33. Due to the merit of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the Supreme Jewel Bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Whatever slight positive potential I may have created, by paying homage, offering, and acknowledging my faults, rejoicing and requesting that the Buddhas stay and teach, I now dedicate all this for full awakening. I dedicate all these roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best, by the victorious ones thus gone of the 3 times, so that I might perform the noble Bodhisattva's deeds. May the King of Dharma Tsongkhapa's way of Dharma practice flourish. May the omens of obstacles be pacified, and all the conducive circumstances be complete. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world. To the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Savior of the snowland teachings and transmigratory beings, who makes extremely clear the path that is unification of emptiness and compassion. To the lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You who uphold the subduous moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the 3 jewels, Saviour of myself and others, your disciples, please live long. By relying on the 2 accumulations of myself and others in the 3 times, may the teachings of the conqueror Losang Dragpa blaze for a long time.